So thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our Behind the Numbers presentation on EdSite Secure Attendance Reports. We are recording today's presentation, so the recording has already started, and we're going to be posting it to CSDE's YouTube channel. My name is Brianna Hennessy. I'm a member of the EdSite team at CSDE, and I'm joined by Akari Sullivan-Custer and Renee Savoy. Renee's going to monitor the chat for questions during the presentation. You can feel free to throw your questions in the chat and Renee will interrupt at a good time. And we're also going to have time for open questions at the end. Let's get started. Our agenda for this training is to first give a quick overview of the differences between EdSite Public and EdSite Secure. The attendance dashboard for EdSite Public went live in the spring of this year. So this presentation is going to focus more on the EdSite Secure site, which went live in August. We're then going to discuss the definitions of our attendance metrics and how to calculate year-to-date metrics. I'm going to give a demonstration of the EdSite Secure attendance reports. And at that point, hopefully we have some time for questions and we'll wrap up with some security reminders. So as a reminder, Connecticut has two portals to facilitate the public and secure reporting of data. The public portal, EdSite Public, contains tables, charts, graphs, links to other reports. This report is accessible to everyone, so there's suppression for some small group sizes to protect student confidentiality. The EdSite Public attendance dashboard has one page, and on that one page is both yearly and monthly attendance data. Here's a link, and you might be able to click on it right now if you are viewing this live. The EdSite Secure portal allows authorized users access to student-level data for students registered to their districts and schools. When students move from one school district to another, the current district can view all of the historic data for that student. On EdSite Secure, attendance is split into two reports, one for monthly attendance and one for yearly attendance. So, what attendance data are available in EdSite? On EdSite Public, everyone can view the state, district, and school level attendance data. You can group data by some different groups, student groups, and you can view the end of year accountability June data, which come from the June PSIS collection, and the year-to-date monthly attendance data, which come from the monthly attendance collection. On EdSite Secure, the authorized users can view district, school, and student level data. You can view charts and graphics for up to 2 student groups at a time. As with the public site, the yearly attendance data come from PSIS, and the monthly attendance data come from the monthly attendance collection. Secure users can also view data for individual months, so they can view both the year-to-date data and the individual month data. And they can view data for both the students currently enrolled in their school and the data for the students who they reported to the state, even if that student has moved on from their district. You may already have access to EdSite Secure. If you don't have access and you want access, we've included this slide that outlines the steps required to gain access. So first, the individual needs to be designated by their superintendent. Once designated, the district's LEA security manager will create an account or assign the appropriate role, whatever they need to do. Then you wait to receive the Welcome to EdSite Secure email before you log in. There are 2 levels of access for an EdSite Secure user. A user might be a district data analyst and have permission to view data for all the students within the district, or a user might be a school data analyst and only have permission to view data for students attending a school or maybe a group of schools. If you need assistance in locating your user ID or resetting your password, you should contact your LEA security manager, and we've included a link to look up your LEA security manager on this slide. A little bit more on the data sources for the attendance dashboards. The June or yearly data come from the June PSIS collection, and all the values for demographics like race, gender, high need status, those are all collected at the same time. All the June data include only the students enrolled on the last day of school. So if a student transfers, the earlier attendance from the earlier school is not included in June data. June data include average daily attendance, chronic absence, and truancy. These yearly data are what is used in the Next Gen accountability. The monthly data are just a dipstick to see how the progress is going throughout the year. These are not used in accountability. Monthly attendance data are collected September through May. Demographic values come from the October PSIS collection and from PSIS registration. October PSIS collection is the collection that was just frozen last week, while registration is updated continually. If a student is not enrolled in the reporting district for the October PSIS collection, then some of those demographic values are set to no. So, if we don't have information that a student is an English learner, for the monthly attendance reports, that student is set to no. For the actual monthly attendance collection, districts report attendance for students enrolled on the last day of the month. So a student who transfers mid-month won't have attendance data from the first half of the month. Truancy data is not reported on a monthly basis, so the monthly reports only include average daily attendance and chronic absence. Chronic absence isn't reported in EdSite Secure EdSite Public for individual months, so it's not populated in September. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I keep saying that throughout this presentation. So what's the difference between average daily attendance, chronic absence, and truancy? Average daily attendance is the total percent of all membership days that a student or group of students is in attendance. A student is chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of school days. And then the percent of students who are chronically absent is the chronic absent rate. A student is truant if they have 4 unexcused absences in a 30-day rolling period, so essentially a month, but it is rolling, or 10 unexcused absences during the year. Truancy is reported as a variable in the June PSIS collection, but CSDE doesn't collect how many absences are excused or unexcused. So let's look at some examples of how this shakes out for some students. Districts report to CSDE, this would be a June example, all the days of attendance and all the days of membership. And CSDE is going to calculate the average daily attendance and the chronic absence status for that student. And then also in June, districts are going to report the truancy status. Districts keep this list of how many absences are excused and unexcused in their own records. These columns don't actually get reported to CSDE. So this is just a fake example that we made up for demonstration purposes. So in this example, student A is enrolled in school for the entire school year, 183 membership days. They have 15 excused absences, 3 unexcused absences. The overall attendance rate is 165 over 83, which is 90.1. So they're not chronically absent. And based on the pattern of excused and unexcused absences, they're not truant. Student B enrolls partway through the year, so they only have 100 membership days. They attend 95 of them. All the absences are excused. They're not chronically absent. They're not truant. Student C enrolled for the entire school year. They attend 179 days out of the 183, so they're not chronically absent, but they had 4 unexcused absences, and if they were all in the same month, this student is truant. So student E had student D has the same attendance pattern with the same 4 unexcused absences, but if those 4 unexcused absences were spread over the year, then this student is not truant. Student E has 11 unexcused absences. Maybe they're spread over the year, maybe they're all in one month. That student is truant. Student F had 23 excused absences, so a lot more than the other students. That student is chronically absent because they had less than 90% attendance, but they're not truant because all of the absences are excused. Student G has 13 excused absences and 10 unexcused absences. They're both chronically absent and truant. Student H enrolled 3 days into the school year, so you see their days of membership is slightly lower. They have the same pattern of excused and unexcused absences as student A, so they're missing the same number of days, but we see that they attended fewer days because they were enrolled for 3 fewer days. So that student attended exactly 90% of the days of membership. They are chronically absent, but not truant. So how is the year-to-date average daily attendance and chronic absence calculated for the monthly reports? Here's an example of 3 students' attendance during the month of September. We see that Brianna attended 17 out of 20 days. So average daily attendance is 85%. She's chronically absent in September. Addie attended 20 out of 20 days. Average daily attendance is perfect, not chronically absent. Callum attended 9 out of 10 days. Maybe he enrolled in school 10 days late. His attendance is exactly 90%, so he's considered chronically absent in September. To find the average daily attendance across all students, we're going to take the sum of all attendance days, which is 46, divided by the sum of all membership days, which is 50. That equals 92%. Notice that Callum is only contributing 10 days to the average daily attendance. The chronic absence rate is the percent of students who are chronically absent. In this case, both Callum and Brianna are chronically absent. So the chronic absence rate is 66.7%. So EdSite tip, the public site does not have chronic absence rates for individual months. And we see why here, because Callum was only absent once and he's chronically absent. And that can really throw the chronic absence rate out of whack for an individual month. We do show those rates on EdSite Secure. So let's add another month of data now. In October, Brianna attended 14 out of the 20 days in October, so 70% average daily attendance. She's still chronically absent in October. Addie attended 19 out of 20 days, 95% is not chronically absent, and Callum attended every day of school. He's not chronically absent. We're going to add up the attendance and membership for each student before we calculate the year-to-date attendance metrics. So here's the table year-to-date. So this is including both September and October. Brianna has a total of 77% average daily attendance. She's chronically absent year-to-date, which makes sense because she was chronically absent in both September and October. Addie is not chronically absent with a total of 39 out of 40 days. Callum is also not chronically absent year-to-date because he had such good attendance in October. Overall, the average daily attendance is the total of all those attendance days, so 99 out of a total of 110 membership days, 90% average daily attendance. The chronic absence rate is 1 out of 3, or 33%. So I want to point out a strange thing that can happen, especially when you're looking at smaller groups. Usually when the average daily attendance increases, the chronic absence decreases. And that's really what we would expect to see. If we look at this little toy example, in September, the average daily attendance was 92%. So the average daily attendance decreased in October because Brianna was absent so much. However, the chronic absence rate also decreased because Callum was right on the edge and he attended a little more school. So he popped right up and got out of that chronic absence status. So it's just a reminder that chronic absence is the percent of students missing a lot of school, while the average daily attendance shows how many students have their butts in seats on any given day. All right, now that we understand, and I assume you're all following perfectly, we all understand how year-to-date calculations are performed. I want to dive into a complex situation where student transfers between districts and schools during the year. So I've completely made up this new example with a fake student and fake schools. The context is, let's imagine Brianna lived in Bolton in September, but moved to Rocky Hill in October. She enrolled in Rocky Hill Center School in October, but then moved again to Rocky Hill Intermediate School in December. So here's the attendance rate for each individual month, and we're going to move on to the year-to-date calculations on the next slide. So first, September in Bolton at Bolton Elementary School, Brianna attends 19 out of 21 days, not chronically absent. Next, Brianna moves to Rocky Hill. She's in the center school. She attends 20 out of 21 days in October, not chronically absent. November is a little rough. She's still in Rocky Hill Center School in November. She only attends 11 out of 19 membership days. So much worse average daily attendance, chronically absent. After that rough month, she stays in Rocky Hill, so still in the same district, but moves to a new school, Rocky Hill Intermediate School, for the month of December, where she has perfect attendance and is not chronically absent. So that's the context for this situation. I know it's a little wacky, but bear with me. So I've copied the table from the previous slide. That's just a copy up at the top. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at what is the overall year-to-date attendance for Brianna. And this is going to look across all schools and all districts. So this calculation is just like the year-to-date example that we saw, with Brianna and Addie and Callum. Each month adds to the prior total. So this is the state level year-to-date average daily attendance and chronic absence. So in September, we just see the data from Bolton Elementary School, the 19 out of 21 days. In October, we're using data from September and October. So we get 39 out of 42. And since it's combining, this calculation is combining data from multiple districts and multiple schools, this is a state level calculation. So in November, we're going to combine data from Bolton and Rocky Hill for September, October, and November. And that's going to go down into November here. So we have a total of 50 out of 61 days attended, which is an overall attendance rate of 82%, and that's chronically absent year to date. And then in December, we combine all the data up to December. We get 70 out of 81 days, average daily attendance of 86.0, and still chronically absent. So if you're on EdSite Public, these records are contributing to the state level chronic absence in November and December. On EdSite Secure, a school or district doesn't have permission necessarily to view data from other districts. So this is only shown to the school or district that the student is currently registered in. So if you're on EdSite Secure, you're going to see these calculations when you're on the current district data tab. Once Brianna leaves this district, these records are going to leave. On the next slide, though, I'll show you what you will see. So next, let's calculate attendance at the district level. So we're going to want to track attendance separately for separate districts. So we're not combining data from different districts and showing, mixing up data from different districts and showing it under one district. So this again is the same exact table, the individual month table that we saw on the previous two slides. And we're going to do a calculation at the district level. So in September, there's only Bolton. Bolton is right here, 19 out of 21 days. That's exactly the same. When Brianna moves to Rocky Hill in October, it's a new district. So we're going to restart the year-to-date calculation. So you can see that the October year-to-date calculation is the same as October in the individual month because that year-to-date calculation has restarted for Rocky Hill. So this is the Rocky Hill district level attendance and membership. In November, Brianna is still in Rocky Hill, so we're going to add to the prior month's attendance. We get 20 plus 11 is 31, 21 plus 19 is 40. So again, that's October and November are being added here because those are both from Rocky Hill to get the year-to-date November. And then Brianna's still in Rocky Hill in December. So we're going to add October, November, December together to get the year-to-date December just for Rocky Hill. So these calculations are going to be used in EdSite Public under the district level. So when you're on EdSite Public, if you're looking at Rocky Hill data for district level Rocky Hill, you're only seeing Rocky Hill data. It's not combining that September data from Bolton into this calculation. If you're on EdSite Secure, you need to go over to the reported district to see the data. If Brianna leaves the district, districts can always view the data that they submitted. So Bolton will always have security on EdSite Secure to view this Bolton record. Rocky Hill will always have the ability to view these Rocky Hill records. Let me know. Oh, Sorry about that. Since this calculation combines data from different schools, though, people with school level access can't view these records. So on the next slide, we'll see what people with school level access can view. So the year-to-date attendance for Brianna within each school, again, I've copied over that individual month. It's just the same as on the other slides. In September, Bolton Elementary, it's just September from Bolton Elementary. In Rocky Hill, when Brianna goes to center school, we restart the year-to-date calculation. So October matches October here. November, Brianna is still enrolled in Rocky Hill Center School. So we're going to add up, we're going to do the year-to-date calculation just within the center school. So that's October and November, goes over to November. In December, when Brianna leaves center school and enrolls in Rocky Hill Intermediate School, we're going to restart the calculations year-to-date for that school. So when I look at EdSite Public at the school level, if I'm looking in December for Rocky Hill Intermediate School, Brianna's not going to be chronically absent because it's only using data that came from Rocky Hill Intermediate School. If I'm on EdSite Secure and I want to view this record, I'm going to go over to the reported school data, and that's going to show data only from that school. So obviously this is like a totally contrived example. Very few students attend 3 different schools in 2 different districts before January, but I wanted to show this example because you might see differences in the year-to-date attendance rate, depending on if you have current district or reported school selected. And on EdSite Public, you might see that the chronic absence rates don't fully add up. You can't take the chronic absence rate for all the schools and average them to get the chronic absence rate for a district, because that year-to-date calculation is operating a little bit differently at the school level, at the district level, and across all schools and districts at the state level. Okay, so why don't I pause there and see if there are any questions at this point before we look at the live example. I can look at the chat.
Yeah, nothing in the chat. There was a question about the presentation and whether it would be shared, and I indicated that everyone who registered for this session is going to get a link to the recording on YouTube when it's posted, and attached to that message with the link will be a PDF of the slides. So we hope that people will share the information around too. I know there's plenty of people who signed up who couldn't make it today. We have 158 in the room, but I think we had over 300 people signed up, and a lot of those individuals requested that they're able to see a recording. So I know there's lots of people in the waiting in the wings, but it looks like we just got another question coming through. Is there any reconciliation from monthly to yearly numbers for students enrolled in the same district all year?
So essentially, no. And if there was any error in the monthly attendance that's submitted, our guidance is to correct it and submit a correct record in June. Does that answer your question?
And if this person wants to give voice to their question, she says thanks. Yes, thanks.
Okay.
But also, if there's anybody out there who's like, oh my gosh, this question is way too hard to type, if you raise your hand, I should be able to unmute you. So feel free to do that. And I think you have the power to raise your hand.
All right. So I'll leave more time for more questions at the end. And let's move on. So here's another question. If a student who's chronically absent leaves to become homeschooled and then returns toward the end of the year, how are those attendance numbers calculated? So they miss 30 days of school, eventually unenrolled to homeschool, but then return at a later date. So if the student misses 30 days of school and they unenroll, and we know about the unenrollment before the data are frozen, we can remove that record. After the data are frozen, which occurs, 10 or 12 days into the next month, that becomes a record of 0 attendance. And goes up on EdSite Public and EdSite Secure as, no zero attendance during that month. That's definitely the kind of thing that would get resolved in the June attendance collection. So like we just said, June is the official used for accountability. That's where all those things need to be resolved. Monthly is just a dipstick to see how things are going. If the student returns at a later date, their attendance year to date is going to start again. Those missing months aren't going to count for or against the student, but it will add up. Like let's say they were enrolled in September, they unenroll October, November, December, come back in January. The year to date is going to include the September and the January, and it's not going to have anything that we didn't have a record for. That's a good question. It's a complicated situation. Okay, so the attendance dashboard, this is the public site we released. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and take this. Renee, can you unmute?
Latanya, I believe I've allowed your mic and you should, there we go.
All right, we were asking if the same applied for students who are homebound.
Hari, I might need, so I think if a student is homebound, you might need to refer to the rules on reporting attendance for that student.
That's right. That's right. That student wouldn't be unenrolled. You would be taking attendance of that student who is homebound and would have to receive education from a certified teacher to be marked receiving in attendance.
Thank you.
I'll put a link to the guidance in the chat.
Thanks, Kari, for doing that.
So a question, are following up on what happens to the days when a student stops attending and then withdraws to homeschool. So let's say the student stops attending on October 10th and they withdraw to homeschool. All the withdrawal paperwork is completed by October 15th. So the student has withdrawn before the last day of the month. That student doesn't need to be reported in the monthly attendance collection. So that October data are not going to count toward anything. It's not going to be included. If the paperwork are not completed and the student has not officially unenrolled, so they just stop attending school on October 10th, they don't show up, but they're still registered. They're still registered in the district on October 30th. That record does need to be reported, and those absences need to be reported as absences. I think I might need to follow up with Kendra Shakir, who is our PSIS registration guru, about if you're able to go back and start the homeschool sooner. If it's all reconciled, so. What's that, Kari?
I don't think so. You can't unenroll a student until a parent comes in and signs the paperwork that the student is going to be homeschooled. So you can't go back until that's the date that they become unenrolled. You need that parent's signature.
Yeah. So if the parent's signature happens before the last day of the month, that's okay. Okay or not okay. That if it happens before the last day of the month, that record doesn't need to be reported. So that student's not going to count for or against anything. If it doesn't happen before the last day of the month, the record needs to be reported with the absences. And Kendra is putting a note. Kari is correct. Wonderful. Thank you, Kendra. We still have a hand raised.
I think that's Latanya. I'm not sure if that's the hand from before or it's a new hand, but I do think she can unmute if it's a current hand. Oh, she put her hand down. I think we're good.
All right. Thank you. These are great questions. All right, so I just have one slide here of the attendance dashboard. I'm going to put my laser back on. I was playing with this morning. You can click on this link if you're live with us and go to the public site. I'm going to focus on EdSite Secure, but if there's questions about EdSite Public, we can certainly come back to them at the end. So let's take a look at the Secure dashboard. Here's the landing page for EdSite Secure, and you can see that there are the two reports, that monthly attendance and the one for yearly attendance. So first, we're going to take a look at monthly attendance. I'm viewing a de-identified version of the dashboard, so these data aren't from a real district. So first, let me point out what the current settings are. So what you see when you open the report, we're looking at the current district. So that's the data for all students who are currently enrolled in my district or in my school if I'm a school user. This is going to be attendance history from any school that they've attended, not just my school. And as registration changes, this graph will change. So if a student moves out of the school today, when I open this up tomorrow, they're not included. I do have an active filter applied. You can see that with the orange chiclet. I'm only viewing the past 3 school years. But for those years, I'm looking at all months and all schools. If I wanted to say just look at October or January, I could view, I could filter the months here. I can see I'm not disaggregating by any student groups. So select lines and select panels are not selected yet. So the percent, and at the top of the chart, I see I'm viewing chronically absent. So these percentages here are the percent of students who are chronically absent. And looking down at the bottom, I see that I'm looking at individual month data. So this has no year-to-date aggregation. It's just that individual month table that's on the top of the other slides. So looking at these data, I see a big spike in chronic absence in November 2022-23. So let's go over to the average daily attendance. When I click over to average daily attendance, we see that the average daily attendance dips, and that makes sense. This is not one of those weird examples that I showed you earlier. The chronic absence increased, the average daily attendance decreased. Let's flip over to year-to-date data. When I click year-to-date, we see a much smoother pattern. We see that the dip in average daily attendance happened in November, and then because December was still below average, the year-to-date average daily attendance continues to decline. As the average daily attendance improves in later months, the year-to-date attendance starts to increase. Let's say we want to view data that was reported by our district. So not students that are enrolled in our district, but the students who were enrolled in our district maybe last year or the year before. So we're going to click on reported district. So now we're viewing data that our district reported, and I also clicked back to chronic absence. And one thing I notice is that the September data for 2024-25 is hard to view because it's getting kind of cut off here. If I hover over that point, I'll see a pop-up with more detailed information. In September, out of 3,235 students, 18.4% were chronically absent. That's high, but remember there were only 20 days in September, so being absent for just 2 days with a bad cold makes a student chronically absent. And again, this is why we don't show those chronic absence rates for September on EdSite Public. So let's take a deeper dive and look at some student groups. So first, I'm going to look at chronic absence by grade. I use the Select Lines dropdown to make a line for each grade. This is totally overwhelming. So what we're going to do is filter out some grades. I'm going to pick some of our heavy hitter grades, which are kindergarten, grade 9, and grade 12. Before I go to that slide, I want to point out that the grade here is the grade that the student was in at the time of attendance. So if I'm looking at a chart of kindergarten from 2022-23, those students are mostly now in 2nd grade. So I'm not looking at a chart of my current kindergarteners. I'm looking at a chart of the kids who were in kindergarten in 2022-23. So this is better. I can see that the filter on lines is applied. I can see that 12th grade, which is gray, has the highest chronic absence, and grade 9 is actually the lowest chronic absence. The patterns in kindergarten and 9-12 or grade 9 looks somewhat similar. You know, we start out a little higher and we're getting better throughout the year. Same thing in this year, getting better throughout the year. Grade 12 has increasing chronic absence at the end of the year. So I'm thinking about ways to help my seniors stay strong with attendance at the end of the year. And let's see if we can dig even deeper by looking at students with disabilities for the panels. And I'm also going to remove the 2022-23 data because it's just too much to look at two groups with multiple years. So just to recap, I'm looking at 3 different grades. There's a grade for each line. And the panels are students with disabilities and students without disabilities. And I have 2 years of data, 2023-24, and then the September 2024-25. So the first thing I notice here is that for 12th grade students, overall chronic absence is much higher for students with disabilities. There's also a gap in grade 9, but we don't see that same gap in kindergarten. Although I do notice that already this year, so 2024-25, the chronic absence rate for kindergartners with disabilities, so that's right here, is quite high. And I might want to dig more deeply into those students. So I can double click on that blue dot right there. That is the kindergartner students with disabilities. And I can pull up the information window, which will show me the September, which will show me the September data for my students who are kindergartners with disability. When that information window comes up, I can scroll down to see who's chronically absent. This site has had names removed, but when users log in, they will be able to see the names of these students. And I can hover over the 3 dots or the little snowman here to export the data to Excel. So let's close out of that information window and go over to the View Data tab. The View Data pane shows all of the data for the report. Notice that the school name here for everyone is district level, and that's because we are on reported district, and the year-to-date information on this page combines data from different schools. So if I want to view one school at a time, I can click over to reported school. I can use all of these drop-downs to select different years, months, or schools. Or I could just view data for just some student groups, you know, just girls, just my white students, so on and so forth. I can view data by the student's reported grade, so the grade that they were in at the time of reporting, or I could look for all my current kindergartners, all my current 9th graders, which you can only view if you're on the current district tab. You only have their current grade if they're currently enrolled in your student. I could also generate a list of students who are chronically absent year to date or chronically absent in an individual month. So I can use all those filters. I have a question here. Can we see cohort data from one year to the next? Kindergarten in 2022-23, and then grade 1 in 2023-24, and grade 2 in 2024-25. I don't think there's an easy way to do that. You would have to pull up the 3 years of data and those 3 grades and look at them. But that's not a bad idea. So I'd like to think about that.
And it would be kind of like a rough cohort, right? Because it's not matched
Right.
students, but you know, we have other reports that use matched cohort to give you an idea of what attendance rates look like for that group of students as they move through the school.
That's correct. Yeah, it would be a rough cohort. Thank you so much. When does each month become available? Currently only September shows up. When would we see October? Soon. We hope it. Monthly data are due on the 10th. And it takes us a few days to clean and then to push the data through all of our procedures. So hopefully early next week, we'll see October. September was a little delayed because we have to wait for the October PSIS demographics. And as in later months, it'll be a little bit quicker to push up. So finally, you can click on the last page to get some resources and some helpful documents. And I did leave time for questions here. We've already started taking some questions, so that's great. And I'll pause for a second and see if there are any other questions.
And again, feel free to raise your hand for questions or comments, and I can go ahead and unmute you.
All right, so I just have a few slides on the yearly attendance. A lot of it is the same as the monthly attendance. One thing you might notice is that there's only current district and reported district. There's no year-to-date aggregation in the yearly attendance because it's all exactly what was reported in June PSIS. And that's only the data from the school the student was enrolled in on the last day of school. So we're not combining data from different schools. So it's just current district and reported district. If you're a school user, you will see this reported district tab, even though you don't see it on the monthly attendance page. You might notice we also have the additional truancy tab for yearly attendance. So let's navigate over to that tab. And you can see that there's only 3 years of truancy data. Truancy only became a student level required element in PSIS June collection in 2021-22. So prior to that, it was reported as a school level percentage. So I don't think I need to go through all the filters and disaggregations. They're all very similar to monthly attendance. You have the view data, you have the resources. So here's some slides. We'll send these slides out later, just a reminder. If you find some data that you want to export to Excel, there's 2 options. You can right-click on the table, graph, or whatever object and select Export Data from the shortcut menu. Or you can click on the object and go to that vertical ellipse, snowman, and click Export Data. If you want to print the whole report, you can go to the upper right-hand corner and select those 3 vertical dots and then select Print. And that brings up the print dialog, which is on the right hand of the screen here. And I recommend that you deselect all the other options and select only show page numbers. When you select print, the dialog generates a PDF. And in the PDF, you might notice that some of the content is cut off or clipped. Depending on your needs, it might be okay, or you might want to go back and reprint. Click expand the clipped and non-visible content to ensure it's all displayed. Once that new PDF is generated, you'll notice that the objects that were clipped now appear with a little expand icon. If you click on that expand icon, it's going to bring you to a page or the page at the end of the PDF where the full content is displayed. I want to wrap up with a reminder of how to keep data safe. If you're an EdSite secure user, do not save your passwords, log out and close your browser windows, use data for work purposes only. Don't access EdSite Secure from public computers. Use your school-provided or district-provided computer. Do not store your data on external devices that could get lost. Do not share your password. And if there is a security breach, make sure you notify the appropriate party. So here's a link to the full security document. So that'll go around with the slides. So here's some contact information. I'm right here, so you can feel free to send me an email. And then Renee Savoy is also on the call, and Kari for attendance support and all things LEAP. She's a great resource. And I'm seeing some more questions come in the chat, so I can take a look at those questions. And you can also raise your hand. So for a student who attends school on a specific day but leaves early, say 8:50 to 11:30, how do we provide them credit for attending school that day when it needs to go in as an unexcused or excused early dismissal, so not meeting the threshold of a day of school per state guidelines? We have had students who are chronically absent who haven't missed a single day of school, but they have several days where they've left earlier than the mandated timing, or they come in, so they're considered absent for the day with an excused or unexcused tardy absence. So I think you're right here that this student, even if they attended for part of the day, they're considered absent for the day. So they could end up being chronically absent if they're missing, 18 half slightly more than half days of school. Kari, do you have any other guidance on that?
I'm typing it. So
Oh.
students have to be in attendance for half the school day or more to be, they have to be present for half the school day or more to be considered in attendance. That's the State Board of Education's definition. So if you have a student who's missing a lot of school because they have appointments and such, they need to be there half a day to get credit for those days. And so even if it's a legitimate medical issue related to 504, you can make adjusted school schedule, like a just individual child schedule for to accommodate their 504 or their illness. But whatever their regularly scheduled day is whatever it is for that student. They may leave early for work or for internship. They have to be there for half the day. I hope that answers that question. And how do you calculate a half a day? And what helps me with this is when we used to have a half day at kindergarten. Half day at kindergarten would be half of that half day at kindergarten. Half day of school is half of that half day of school. So if you're there for 4 hours, they have to be there for 2. And a lot of that, has to do with reconciling, signing out, and checking in.
I'm wondering if Zach has a follow-up, because I saw him raise his hand and I've given him the ability to unmute his own mic. So maybe he wants to add something on. If so, feel free.
Yep. Hi. I asked the original question. So I guess my follow-up to that response would be, if a student is leaving at 8:45 to 11:30, they've been in school for 3 hours, and if we have to mark them absent, it's like they never came to school that day. So we have kids getting 3 hours over, let's say 2 days in a row, they do the same thing. They get essentially a full day of school over 2 days, but they're getting marked absent as if they weren't there for 2 days. Is there a way or an option for us to be able to allow that they were present in school, but they did miss some time? I don't see the incentive in having kids. The kids aren't going to come to school at all if there's no incentive to come to school for part of the day, or let's say they have an appointment in the morning, they come after 12:15. They have no incentive to come if they're being marked absent. I mean, we know the incentive, but the families and them don't see the incentive in that piece of it. If it's just like it kind of seems like they didn't come at all. If they're just marked as absence, and then we get the question from the families of, well, wait a second, they were there that day. Why do they have this absence on the report card? They didn't miss that day, and I had to explain that it's not a matter of them missing the day. We know they came in, but they didn't come for long enough.
Right, that's right. Because in Connecticut, we track daily attendance. So you can't make up time on another day. You take daily attendance. So if they can come back to school after their appointment to make up that time and not miss as much time, but strongly encourage students to be there for half a day or more, or they're going to be marked absent.
Yeah, and we do that. I just, I've looked at it for a while now and thinking about how is it fair to a kid who comes from 9 to 12 that they leave at 12 o'clock? It's not half the day, and they get marked absent for that entire day because they had to, for whatever reason, they had to leave early. It's just unfortunate because we have kids that are trying to get to school and be in school and attend, and it's as if in the system, right, on paper, it's as if they didn't come to school at all, and it just is an unfortunate situation that I get it, and I get it too.
That's in the state. That would be in the state reporting, but on paper in the school district, he was there, he or she were there, but for the state reporting purposes, you have to count the half a day.
Yep.
I know, Kari, you responded to Jennifer's question initially in the chat, or you gave voice to that question. She has a little bit of a follow-up here, talking about an adjusted school schedule for the student with the 504. If they had an adjusted schedule that was 8:30 to 1 on Monday and Wednesday, due to chemotherapy or something else, for example, is that something that's allowable that people have in place in districts?
It could be allowable. It's really a local district decision if they want to accommodate a 50 that and a 504 plan. But if that's the student's schedule and it's adopted and in the 504 plan, then that would be their individual schedule for the day. I hope that's helpful, Jennifer.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands up, but we can wait. Oh, and I just heard chats come through.
So they would have to be there for half of that scheduled day. If it was, for your example, 8:30 to 1, they would have to be there for half that scheduled day if that is what their day schedule is.
Thank you so much for all the questions and Kari for answering them. I'll give a couple more minutes for if there's any questions.
I see Betsy has her hand up. I'm going to go ahead and give her mic access. Let's see. Oh,
I
no,
think I
she has
just
mic
did.
access. Perfect.
I got in there and I did it.
Thanks.
So Betsy, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Multiple steps. We have to allow you to unmute and then you can unmute yourself.
But we can't hear you yet. And please, Betsy, if you're unable to unmute before we end this, I hope you'll follow up with your question via email or give a call so we can get your questions answered.
Ari has just put a link for the Talk Tuesdays. They're a great resource.
Every other Tuesday, we meet and talk about anything to do with attendance, and we always have districts on to share their bright spots and learn from each other.
How do you calculate a half a day when school is scheduled for a 1 o'clock dismissal? So it sounds, Kari, like you would take the number of hours between the beginning of the day. So let's say 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock,
Yes.
which would be 5 hours. And then a student in attendance for 2.5 hours is in
Mhm.
attendance.
Yes, that's right. It counts lunch, recess, everything. It's just that basic. You have to be there for half of the day.
You're getting some positive feedback on your Talk Tuesdays, Kari.
I
Ruth.
recognize some names here.
That's
We're in
great.
good company.
And Scott
Any
wants to
district,
know, yeah.
yep. So any district can join. We just had one this week, but we have a Talk Tuesday webpage, which I put in the chat, where we put recordings of all our Talk Tuesdays and the PowerPoint slides. Our next Talk Tuesday is in December, because we're skipping the week of Thanksgiving. It just didn't seem like it convenient for most people, but every other Tuesday. And in that link, in the Talk Tuesday page, you'll see how you register. So everyone has to register, and then you'll get it every week. Every 2 weeks, you'll get a notice. And if anyone has any bright spots they want to share, successes, we're always looking to hear the good work that's happening in our districts.
Are Are there specific codes that every single district should be using when doing attendance, or is that a component of attendance specific to each individual district? So if everyone is doing their own way using their own codes, are we getting accurate and reliable data statewide for attendance information? So I don't think we have guidance on specific codes. You know, we have guidance on what can constitute a day in attendance. So half a day of the student's scheduled day. And we have guidance on how districts can determine if an absence is excused or unexcused. But as I mentioned before, CSDE is not actually collecting whether those absences are excused or unexcused. We only collect that truancy variable at the end. So that's on the districts to kind of turn those excused and unexcused absences into whether or not the student was truant. If everyone is doing it their own way, using their own codes, are we getting accurate and reliable data statewide for attendance information? Yeah, I think everyone is doing the best. Go ahead, the best they can.
So what Connecticut, the State Department of Education, I feel like I'm stepping in for Kendra, but we collect the numbers of days in membership and the number of days in attendance. That's what we collect. The codes are done at a local level through your PowerSchool or your PSIS system, whichever system you're using. Some schools do excuse, some schools do verified, but we only collect were the number of days in attendance and number of days of membership. And there's lots of guidance about that. I think the guidance in the PSIS document reference guide that I put in the chat up above, Appendix F, and I think it's Appendix L, are really, really helpful for the getting into the technical questions. So I would familiarize yourself with those two appendices for setting up your systems for tracking attendance.
I think we may have reached the end of the questions.
I think so. But if, again, as we said before, if there's any additional questions, you can contact myself, Renee, Kari, Kendra. Why is student E truant? They have 11 unexcused absences. So the cutoff for truancy is 10.
I don't have it in front of me. But if they have 10 unexcused absences in a year, they are considered to be truant. And there are procedures that need to be taken as far as meetings with families, trying to find out the reasons why and coming up with an attendance plan. And that is there's truancy guidance on our website as well. I can put that in here. But if the student had 11 unexcused absences, they would be truant.
And the other thing I can do when I send out the recording and the slides, which I'll be doing as soon as the recording is posted, is I can also include a listing of the resources that we mentioned here. Many of them are in the chat, but I can also include the truancy information if, just sort of like round out the set of resources that we provide to supplement what we talked about here today.
I'll put a link to the related resources in the chronic absence page. And then there's most of the information is there.
I got a follow-up question. Are the first 9 absences still considered excused by the state?
Yes. So the first 9 absences, as long as they're accompanied by parent permission, whether you get it through a note or a conversation with the family, they are excused for any reason, the first 9. After that, they need further documentation, or a discussion with someone at the school to explain what happened, or a doctor's note if it makes sense that they get a doctor's note.
So let me repeat that. The first 9 are excused with some communication from the parent.
Right.
So in this example, this hypothetical example, there was no communication from the parent. The student did not show up for school. You know, maybe there were efforts to reach out to the parent. There's no documentation that this absence was recognized. If the parent sent a note for any reason, we could move 9 of these, and not we CSDE, we the district.